Most men fear rejection so much that they end up asking for intimacy in the wrong way, too fast, too indirect, or too forcefully. But the truth is, when you understand a woman's emotional psychology and approach intimacy with clarity, confidence, and respect, the chances of rejection drop dramatically. Today, I'll break down the simple psychological shifts that help a woman feel safe, comfortable, and naturally open to closeness without pressure, chasing, or awkwardness. Emotional safety is the foundation of a woman's willingness to move toward intimacy. Many men underestimate how deeply a woman's sense of safety influences her decisions, especially when it comes to physical closeness. For a woman, intimacy is not just physical. It's psychological, emotional, and relational. If she senses pressure, unpredictability, emotional volatility, or a lack of respect, she will instinctively pull back, even if she is attracted. Her nervous system is wired to protect her from discomfort, vulnerability, and potential emotional harm. That's why a man must focus on creating an environment where she feels understood, valued, and emotionally relaxed in his presence. Emotional safety begins with consistency. A woman feels comfortable when a man's words, actions, and energy align. If he says one thing but behaves differently, she feels uncertainty, and uncertainty triggers caution. When a man is consistent, emotionally steady, responsive without being overbearing, calm rather than reactive, she lets her guard down naturally. Consistency signals reliability, and reliability signals safety. This is not about pretending to be perfect. It's about showing emotional self-control and stability, which gives her permission to trust the space she shares with him. Another important layer of emotional safety is respect for boundaries. Women quickly sense when a man views intimacy as something he is owed or entitled to. That pressure becomes a major reason for rejection. But when a man respects her pace, listens to her comfort level, and remains patient, she feels respected rather than used. Patience is not passivity. It is power. It communicates, I value your comfort as much as my desire. This shifts the entire dynamic. A woman is far more likely to move closer when she knows he won't push past her boundaries or make her feel guilty for needing time or clarity. Communication also plays a huge role. A woman feels emotionally safe with a man who communicates with clarity instead of leaving her to guess his intentions. Transparency lowers her anxiety while mixed signals raise it. She needs to understand the emotional tone behind his actions. If he wants closeness, his approach should be gentle and direct, not manipulative or confusing. When a man speaks respectfully and expresses himself without placing expectations on her, she experiences him as trustworthy. Trust builds comfort, and comfort leads to openness. Emotional safety also depends on how a man responds to her emotions. If she expresses discomfort, confusion, hesitation, or even stress from unrelated areas of her life, she pays close attention to how he reacts. Does he get annoyed? Does he take it personally? Does he make her feel dramatic or difficult? Or does he hold space for her feelings without judgment? A man who can remain grounded, patient, and validating during emotional moments creates an atmosphere where she feels understood. Being understood is one of the strongest emotional triggers for a woman to consider deeper intimacy. Presence is another subtle but important factor. Women feel safe when a man is mentally and emotionally present with them. That means he listens without interrupting, observes her cues, and engages with genuine interest rather than seeing intimacy as a goal to reach. When she feels that he is truly connecting, not just waiting for the moment to escalate physically, her nervous system shifts into openness rather than defense. Presence is not about grand gestures. It's about the kind of attention that makes her feel prioritized rather than objectified. Finally, emotional safety increases when she senses that a man has emotional intelligence. A man who manages his own emotions well creates a stable environment for her. If he can express vulnerability without collapsing, confidence without arrogance, desire without pressure, and boundaries without aggression, she experiences him as emotionally mature. Emotional maturity tells her that intimacy with him won't lead to emotional chaos, guilt, or confusion. It signals that he can be trusted with her vulnerability, which makes closeness feel more like a choice than a risk. One of the biggest reasons men face rejection when asking for intimacy is that they misinterpret a woman's signals. While men often rely on direct communication or physical cues, women tend to communicate comfort, interest, or hesitation through subtle emotional and behavioral signs. These signs are not meant to be confusing, they are simply part of how women protect themselves emotionally. Understanding these signals allows a man to move with sensitivity rather than assumption, which reduces pressure and increases trust. When a woman feels that a man is tuned into her cues rather than projecting his desires onto her, she naturally becomes more open to deeper connection. The first category of signals men must learn to read is comfort cues. Comfort looks like relaxed posture, open body language, steady eye contact, and a warm tone of voice. When a woman feels safe and emotionally connected, her body softens. She leans in, speaks more openly, engages in conversation with ease, and may initiate light touches like fixing her hair, adjusting her clothes, or brushing against him lightly. These small signals reflect her comfort with his presence, and comfort is the soil from which intimacy grows. If a man notices these cues, it tells him that the emotional environment is right for deeper conversation and potentially deeper closeness. On the opposite side, discomfort cues are subtle but crucial to understand. Discomfort doesn't always look like an obvious no. It often appears as hesitation, reduced eye contact, crossed arms, forced smiles, or shorter responses. A woman may shift her body away slightly, look at her phone more often, or avoid deeper conversation. These signs don't always mean she is rejecting him as a person. They often mean she needs more time, more connection, or more emotional safety before things can escalate. When a man ignores these cues or pushes harder, she instinctively pulls away. But when he recognizes and respects hesitation, it builds trust because she feels seen rather than pressured. Another important signal to read is reciprocity. Intimacy should feel like a mutual rhythm, not a one-sided pursuit. If a woman mirrors his energy, initiates conversations, responds with enthusiasm, or maintains the flow of interaction, it's a strong sign of interest. If she initiates spending time together, suggests plans, or expresses curiosity about his life, these behaviors show emotional investment. On the other hand, if she consistently avoids plans, delays responses, or keeps conversations shallow, she may not be ready for deeper closeness. Recognizing the difference saves him from misinterpretation and unnecessary disappointment. Men must also learn to read emotional openness. A woman becomes intimate with someone she trusts emotionally, and she shows this through sharing her thoughts, daily experiences, and feelings. When she starts expressing vulnerabilities, asking for his perspective, or seeking emotional reassurance, it means she sees him as someone safe. Emotional openness is one of the strongest indicators that she may eventually feel comfortable with physical closeness. If a man overlooks this stage and jumps straight to physical advances, she may perceive him as emotionally disconnected, which triggers withdrawal rather than connection. Timing is another essential aspect of reading signals. A woman's emotional state in the moment influences her openness to intimacy. If she is stressed, overwhelmed, distracted, or preoccupied, she may not respond positively, even if she is actually interested in him. Misreading timing leads to rejection, not because she doesn't want closeness, but because the moment didn't feel right. A man who pays attention to her mood, energy, and emotional availability is far more likely to create the right moment for intimacy to naturally unfold. Finally, men must understand that reading signals is not about guessing, it's about paying attention. Listening to her tone, observing her body language, respecting her boundaries, and responding with emotional intelligence shows her that he values her comfort. When a woman feels that he understands her signals rather than ignoring or misinterpreting them, she begins to trust him on a deeper level, and that trust becomes the pathway to intimacy. Intimacy is not something that magically appears in a moment. It is the result of emotional connection built over time. Many men make the mistake of asking for physical closeness before a woman feels relational closeness, and that mismatch creates discomfort and resistance. For a woman, connection is the emotional bridge that leads to intimacy. Without that bridge, she feels exposed, unsafe, or unsure. But when a man prioritizes building a genuine bond first, intimacy becomes a natural extension rather than an uncomfortable request. This shift changes everything about how she perceives him, responds to him, and moves toward him. Building connection begins with emotional attentiveness. A woman needs to feel that a man is genuinely present with her, not just physically nearby, but emotionally engaged. This means listening attentively, understanding her moods, paying attention to her interests, and valuing her feelings. Emotional attentiveness creates a sense of being seen and understood, and that experience is foundational for a woman to open up. When she feels understood, she becomes more expressive, more trusting, and more confident in sharing her inner world. That exchange is what deepens the bond and sets the stage for natural intimacy. Another key element of connection is shared experiences. Intimacy grows when two people spend meaningful time together, enjoy conversations, and create positive emotional associations. Sharing laughter, exchanging stories, engaging in activities, or simply spending relaxed time together helps a woman feel emotionally anchored. These moments create familiarity and comfort, which reduces anxiety and increases desire. When she associates a man with emotional warmth rather than pressure, she feels safe enough to let her guard down. Through shared experiences, a man shows that he values her presence and enjoys being around her beyond any physical expectation. Connection is also built through authenticity. A woman can sense when a man is putting on an act, trying too hard, or behaving differently to impress her. Pretending creates distance because it feels insincere. Authenticity, on the other hand, creates closeness. When a man speaks honestly, expresses himself naturally, and shows his real personality, it encourages her to be authentic as well. Two genuine people connect faster than two people performing roles. Authenticity fosters emotional intimacy long before physical intimacy is even discussed. Emotional credibility is another essential part of connection. A woman needs to feel that a man is emotionally reliable, meaning he doesn't disappear, send mixed signals, or change his energy unpredictably. When his presence is steady and his intentions are clear, the emotional bond strengthens. Emotional credibility tells her that she is not stepping into something unstable or risky. This stability is deeply attractive to women because it reduces the fear of being hurt, misled, or confused. The stronger her sense of emotional security, the more likely she is to consider deeper intimacy. Connection is also strengthened through genuine respect. Respect is not just about polite behavior, it's about valuing her opinions, acknowledging her boundaries, and treating her emotional world with care. When a man respects a woman's pace, her feelings, and her individuality, she feels valued rather than objectified. Respect creates emotional warmth, and emotional warmth naturally leads to comfort. When a woman feels respected, she becomes more open to exploring closeness because she does not fear being rushed or misunderstood. Finally, connection grows through emotional reciprocity, the give and take that forms a balanced relationship dynamic. When a man shares parts of his world, expresses his thoughts, and opens up slowly, it encourages her to reciprocate. This mutual exchange creates emotional alignment, which is one of the strongest predictors of intimacy. A woman moves closer when she feels that both hearts are participating, not just one. When the emotional connection is established, the question of intimacy no longer feels like a request. It becomes a natural and mutual progression. Direct but respectful communication is one of the most effective ways for a man to approach intimacy without triggering rejection, discomfort, or pressure. Many men believe that being indirect protects them from rejection, but subtle hints and unclear intentions often confuse a woman or make her feel unsure about his motives. Women value clarity because clarity feels safe. When a man communicates directly with calm confidence and genuine respect, she doesn't feel cornered or manipulated. Instead, she feels like she's being approached by someone emotionally mature, someone who knows what he wants yet still values her comfort, boundaries, and autonomy. A crucial part of direct communication is emotional transparency. Women are naturally intuitive, and they can sense even the smallest hesitation or hidden agenda. When a man attempts to hide his intentions or tiptoe around the topic of closeness, she may interpret it as emotional immaturity or uncertainty. Transparent communication means expressing feelings or desires without pressure, entitlement, or expectation. It doesn't mean confessing everything intensely or dramatically. It simply means being honest in a steady, grounded way. Honesty creates clarity, and clarity creates trust. Trust, in turn, creates the internal safety she needs to consider intimacy. Tone is just as important as the words themselves. A calm, steady, and respectful tone communicates emotional stability. It makes her feel like she can respond freely rather than being pushed toward a certain answer. On the other hand, a rushed, needy, or overly intense tone puts pressure on her nervous system, triggering hesitation. When a man speaks with emotional control, she feels like she is interacting with someone who can handle any answer she gives, whether it is yes, not yet, or even no. That emotional safety is crucial because the freedom to say no is what makes a woman more likely to eventually say yes. Respectful communication also involves asking rather than assuming. Many men mistakenly escalate physically based on assumption rather than clarity. Assumptions often lead to misreading the moment or crossing her emotional boundaries. Asking respectfully doesn't weaken a man's position, it strengthens it. It shows confidence, not insecurity. It signals that he is comfortable with himself and that he respects her choice. When a woman feels the freedom to choose rather than feeling expected or obligated, she becomes more open to intimacy because the interaction feels collaborative rather than one-sided. Another important part of respectful communication is acknowledging her boundaries without making her feel guilty or pressured. If she expresses discomfort, hesitates, or wants to slow down, a mature response makes all the difference. Many women fear intimacy not because they lack desire, but because they fear emotional consequences, judgment, disappointment, or tension if they express their true needs. When a man listens, validates her feelings, and adjusts his pace, she feels safe, understood, and appreciated. This emotional maturity often becomes the very reason she feels more comfortable progressing toward closeness later on. Direct communication should also include emotional clarity, meaning a man understands what he feels and what he wants before expressing it. When he is internally confused or unsure, his communication becomes inconsistent or mixed. Mixed signals create emotional instability for a woman. Stability comes from a man who has reflected on his intentions and can express them without being controlling or vague. Emotional clarity makes him appear confident and grounded. Confidence, when paired with respect, is one of the strongest masculine traits that attracts a woman toward intimacy. Finally, direct but respectful communication strengthens connection because it removes uncertainty. Uncertainty is one of the biggest barriers to intimacy for women. When she knows exactly where a man stands, what he wants, and how he feels, delivered in a calm and respectful way, she feels emotionally safe. Emotional safety allows attraction to flow naturally, making the transition to intimacy feel like a shared decision rather than a pressured request. Handling no with maturity is one of the strongest signs of emotional intelligence in a man, and it directly impacts whether a woman will ever feel open to intimacy in the future. Many women are not rejecting the man himself when they say no. They are rejecting the timing, the approach, or the emotional environment. A man who responds with defensiveness, frustration, or sulking reinforces her fear that intimacy with him will come with emotional consequences. On the other hand, a mature reaction communicates safety, stability, and confidence, qualities that make her reconsider closeness later, not shut down permanently. How a man handles no determines whether the door remains open or quietly closes. The first part of maturity is separating her response from your ego. When a woman says no, she is communicating her comfort level, not attacking your worth. Men who take rejection personally often react with irritation, withdrawal, or emotional guilt trips. This shifts the emotional burden onto her, making her feel pressured or unsafe. A mature man understands that her boundaries or hesitation are not a reflection of his masculinity. They are simply part of her emotional process. When he stays composed, he communicates emotional strength, and that strength builds trust rather than fear. Another important aspect is maintaining emotional steadiness in the moment. A woman watches how a man's face, tone, and body language shift when he hears no. If he becomes cold, distant, sarcastic, or hurtful, it tells her that intimacy with him will come with emotional instability. This creates long-lasting resistance. But if he remains calm, respectful, and understanding, she experiences him as grounded. Emotional steadiness is deeply attractive to women because it makes closeness feel safe rather than risky. His reaction becomes a message: your boundaries don't threaten me, I can handle them. Maturity also means avoiding persuasion or pushing after she has clearly expressed discomfort. Many men make the mistake of trying to negotiate or convince her to change her mind. This creates pressure, and pressure activates a woman's instinct to withdraw. Respecting a no without trying to reshape it demonstrates that he values her emotional autonomy. A woman needs to feel that intimacy is something she chooses, not something she is talked into. When she sees that a man respects her decisions, she becomes more open over time because she knows she won't be forced into anything. Another part of handling no maturely is the ability to stay connected instead of shutting down. Some men become distant or lose interest when their request is denied, but this behavior signals conditional affection. Women pull back from men who only stay engaged when they're getting what they want. A mature man maintains warmth, respect, and emotional connection even after hearing no. This consistency communicates that he values her for more than physical closeness. When a woman realizes she won't be punished emotionally for setting boundaries, she relaxes, and that relaxation often leads to increased trust and eventually increased intimacy. Handling no maturely also involves self-reflection. Instead of blaming her, a thoughtful man asks himself whether the timing was right, whether emotional connection was strong enough, or whether she needed more clarity or security. Self-reflection helps him adjust his approach, not his worth. This ability to understand context and emotions sets him apart as emotionally intelligent. Women are drawn to men who can evaluate situations without resentment because it demonstrates emotional maturity and relationship readiness. Finally, one of the deepest aspects of maturity is patience. Intimacy is a process, and women often need time before moving forward. When a man shows patience without pressure, he conveys confidence and self-control. These traits make her feel safe enough to open emotionally, and emotional openness is what eventually leads to physical closeness. A patient man becomes someone she can trust with her vulnerability, her boundaries, and ultimately her intimacy. Intimacy thrives when it is based on mutual desire, not pressure, expectation, or one-sided pursuit. Many men unknowingly sabotage connection by treating intimacy like something they must earn, convince her of, or chase. But women open up emotionally and physically when they feel they are choosing intimacy, not complying with it. Seeing intimacy as a shared choice means understanding that it is a collaborative experience between two people, not a goal one person tries to reach. This mindset shift alone takes away the tension, reduces fear of rejection, and creates an environment where closeness develops naturally instead of forcefully. A shared choice mindset begins with recognizing that women need to feel agency in the interaction. Agency means she feels in control of her decisions, her pace, and her boundaries. When a man respects her autonomy, she feels respected as a person, not evaluated for what she can offer. Intimacy for women is deeply tied to emotional safety, and emotional safety increases when she feels her participation is voluntary. When she senses that a man is not expecting, chasing, or demanding intimacy, the pressure dissolves. Without pressure, her nervous system relaxes, and relaxed energy is the foundation on which desire grows. Another important part of intimacy being a shared choice is emotional alignment. Closeness flows when both people are in sync emotionally, mentally, and energetically. If a man wants intimacy, but she feels disconnected, the mismatch creates discomfort. But when he prioritizes connection before chemistry, she begins to feel emotionally aligned with him. Emotional alignment means their communication feels easy, their presence feels comfortable, and their intentions feel understood. When the emotional atmosphere is balanced, intimacy becomes a natural extension of their dynamic instead of an abrupt request. This shared approach also requires awareness of her pacing. Women move toward intimacy in phases: emotional comfort, mental connection, energetic compatibility, and then physical closeness. A man who rushes these phases makes her feel unsafe. A man who matches her pace makes her feel secure. When he senses that she needs time, more emotional bonding, or deeper connection, and he responds with patience, she becomes more open. Pacing is not about slowing down artificially. It is about responding to the flow of her comfort. When a woman feels her pace is respected, she becomes more willing to explore intimacy because she does not fear being overwhelmed or misunderstood. Another aspect of shared choice is mutual initiation. Many men believe they must be the only ones to initiate closeness, but women also initiate when they feel safe and desired without pressure. Women express interest through subtle cues like leaning closer, touching lightly, initiating conversations, or inviting emotional vulnerability. When a man notices and responds to these cues without dominating the interaction, intimacy develops in a natural, mutual rhythm. Shared initiation reinforces that closeness is something happening between them, not something he is pushing toward her.